Welcome to the Food Startups Podcast.
Excellent. Glad to be here. We're talking about some awesome stuff right now. Matt, you want to go ahead and introduce the topic for today?
Yeah, sure. So we were actually wanting to do a success spotlight, and the premise is this. Find some Inc. 5000 companies, and the reason we chose Inc. 5000 is it publishes important things like revenue growth and number of employees in the food industry, and try to figure out exactly why they're having success and what they're all about. We are not affiliated with them at all. We're just making our best guess as to why they might be successful.
Definitely. I think it's really useful to do this because it's actually going to really hone your analytical skills. And I think it's also going to just provide you with some fresh perspective on some of the other challenges that food entrepreneurs have and the lay of the land that you might not know in a slightly different niche or a slightly different industry. So, my man Matt, without further ado, why don't you go ahead and tell me a little bit. So we both gave ourselves the challenge to choose a company and do an hour or two of work on them and really trying to flush out some interesting things.
And yes, I chose adventure in food trading. And Danny, what did you choose?
I chose Lenny and Larry's. Lenny and Larry's make cookies, muffins, and brownies, and they're coming out of Northridge, Cali.
Great. Now, adventures in food trading, how could it not be exciting? So what do? They are a very interesting company. They primarily sell to restaurants, and they have very exotic vendors of game, meat, and other exotic foods. And they're based out of upstate New York. And when I say exotic, I mean really, really exotic. We're talking things like squab, which is a young domestic pigeon, antelope, giant capers on the stem, wild boar meat, Korean citron juice, a 1 ounce tin of saffron, green peppercorns, all sorts of stuff. So really interesting, rare gourmet stuff, and they sell them to restaurants.
Sounds like a cheap date to take a vegetarian to.
Yeah, it would be pretty cheap, man.
That's cool.
It probably wouldn't last that long. They might be offended by some of these exotic animals. But as far as we know, none of these animals are endangered species.
Yeah. And that's really fascinating, I think, because it's going to be interesting learning about their business and who their customers are. Their company name doesn't really reveal too much, and they have a website, right? So go ahead, tell me what besides the name, what research did you do? What did you find out?
So, listeners, if you want to follow along with us, you can go to adventureinfood.com. We're going to post all this on the website, but if you want to do your own analysis and see if you agree or disagree with us, but here are some of the quick stats. Founded in 2007, it's a kind of a family-owned or a family-headed business. Brother and sister, they're both CPAs, and the sister is also a lawyer. They have 12 employees. Now, in between 2009 and 2012, they've grown from $1.1 million in revenue to $2.6 million.
Wow.
Yeah, so they definitely look like they're going in the right direction. More than anything that I got by looking at their website and seeing a few interviews, they really care and they really have fun with what they're doing. It seems that Eric Gunther, I hope I pronounced that right, Eric Gunther, has been involved in food in some capacity for most of his life. And
he's the CEO of the company?
He is he's the president of the company. And not only do they primarily sell to restaurants, and they also help out their vendors and their restaurants via two different programs. One is called Empire 87, which is a local food growing initiative. And it's basically trying to create transparency, connecting farmers and chefs. So they basically highlight these farmers and vendors that are local, because not all of the food that Adventures in Food sells, is local or even domestic. Some of it's international, but they try to help the local farmers in upstate New York, Vermont, and Massachusetts to, gain notoriety for the products that they're selling, because they believe in the local food movement. So that's really cool. And I was pretty impressed by that. They also have something else called their Media Assistance Program. And what they do is every year they select 3 small businesses, whether it's a vendor, a provider of this game meat or exotic food, or one of the restaurants that's purchasing from them, and they focus on ones that are just starting out. And they help them out with a free kind of marketing makeover, right? Where they give them, a new website design, help them with photography and multimedia and social media.
Wow, that's a really cool company. I bet that they have achieved a lot of growth with some of the more local efforts they've done in the past few years, simply because I know New York State has really pushed local ingredients, local consumption in the past few years, and that there have been state initiatives around that as well. So, I'd love to hear more from the founders or the folks that work over what else they've been doing to make themselves successful. If it's just been the right time, if they've put into place operations or expanded their product line, because it's fascinating. It's fascinating. And I wonder how they manage so many different products.
Yeah, and just looking at their Facebook page and their Twitter, it seems like they really love what they're doing. And it excites me, the fact that they have all these cool exotic ingredients to offer. Because of their initiatives, to me, it seems like they have great relationships. So they're really big on relationships with their vendors and the restaurants that buy from them. So I think that's got to be a huge advantage to the success of their business. I would guess that if you surveyed the restaurants and vendors, they would say that they're very happy working with Adventures in Food.
Yeah, Matt. So, I wonder, what do you think are some of their challenges that they actually face? A lot of the things that they're doing must be difficult. What are some things you've seen or you read about?
Well, one thing that I'm thinking, just based on looking at this, is that they probably, wild boar meat, python, antelope. This is not like selling, chicken wings where you can sell at very high orders. So I imagine it might be a challenge to have many restaurants buying from them, as opposed to, if you're selling a more mainstream ingredient to a large restaurant chain, then, that 1 monthly order from that restaurant could be, a very high portion of your business. Where with these guys, it seems like, there could be some chain restaurants involved, but more often than not, I feel like they're working with a lot of little guys, and they're trying to help the little guys. But the downside of working with little guys is you have many more relationships to manage, and logistically, it can be a little bit more difficult.
Definitely. Some other things that come to mind is that, I took a look and I saw that they've hired some chefs before to work on their team. So they're really into fine foods. And so that's probably an industry that's pretty closed. It's pretty closed, but then once you're in, you kind of know how it works and know who your customers are. You can grow a sales team out by projecting if you're expanding your coverage to a greater area, and you can reach out to more restaurants, that sort of thing. I know that, they seem to carry some products that are stocked with wholesale restaurant suppliers. Yeah, so I'd be interested in understanding how much of their revenue comes from really rare foods, and whether or not they have some specialty foods that restaurants need, and then also fill out the rest. There's a lot of different ways I can see this business running. And, maybe it's just a result of just New Yorkers in New York State and, a greater part of the United States becoming more educated on local food and dining locally. And, so it sounds like it's a great opportunity. And, I'd love to, like I said, I'd love to hear more about them.
Maybe in the future we can bring these guys on for an interview and they can clarify more of this. But yes, that was a snapshot, right? Our own trying to figure out on just a quick glance, a snapshot of Adventures in Food. Now, Danny, tell us about Lenny and Larry's.
All right. Lenny and Larry's, they've been around for a while, since the early 1990s, actually, but they seem to have gained a lot of traction in the past few years, growing over 100% in the past 3 years and actually raising revenues to about $5 million. And they really do so by actually creating products that sell to retailers. And basically they're consumer-facing products. Consumers will buy them, cookies, muffins, and brownies. Okay, so Matt, this is a little bit different, right? Obviously very, very different immediately when you think about consumer-facing product and something that than wholesale. There's a little bit more information out there on the internet about them as a result. And you kind of can see, well, what are some of the things that are working for them, and what are some things that might not work so well for them? What are their challenges? Thankfully, this company is pretty transparent that, they've been successful because they have some things they don't stray from, mainly all natural. They play in the space of health foods and also protein, high protein foods that you'll get at the gym, foods that normally cost like $5 and have 20 grams of protein. And what they do differently is that they only use all natural ingredients, and they're really strongly brand that. I love it. They just tell the truth about their ingredients. They say they never, ever, ever stray from. They don't use things like sugar, alcohol. They don't use things like sucralose. They don't lie. They don't try to do things that other companies do, which compromise the product. Okay, so I really like that because it means they're a little bit more transparent as well. It means I can trust them. It means I can also learn a little bit more about how their business is successful.
One thing to me that stands out, Danny, looking at their stats, and I'll just give you the stat breakdown. Gone from 2.5 million to 5.2 million, in 3 years, from 2009 revenue to 2012 revenue. And they were founded in 1993. So I don't have any idea, where they were in the 90s, right? We don't have that data in front of us. But the fact that they've been in this for 21 years means they're definitely dedicated to it. And to me, it's really interesting, it was 2012 the highest they've been, or do you think maybe they were really hot in the 90s and then they came down a little bit and now they're rising back up again?
I don't know. I don't know because, maybe I should check the Inc. 5000 from previous years because it's hard to figure that out. My guess, this is a founder story, and Barry Turner is this guy who used to actually be a cast member on American Gladiator. He's a founder, and there's a co-founder as well who's exited the company. So they, sometimes founders take a while. It takes a while for them to gain traction. They are growing in a time period where all natural has grown like it never has before, where you're seeing companies that have very artificial ingredients actually go back on artificial and go towards natural. So they're definitely riding the wave. They have some strong branding. They are becoming more successful because they're kind of riding this wave that they believed in all along. But it's limited as far as the information goes. What they have been doing is that they have been making sure that they actually have creative flavors and amazing tasting products. They have amazing, if you look at their reviews on Amazon.com, for example, they have really highly rated brownies that are called things like triple chocolate mussel brownie, okay, that have really high amounts of protein, 20 grams of protein. Or they have something called the complete cookie, which has got a really great ring to it as well. And it's vegan. They've introduced gluten-free into the market. So they're introducing and they're expanding a product line. And man, that's awesome because if you're expanding a product line and you have distribution that's also slowly expanding and, you're actually targeting different niches. If you're targeting gluten-free folks, than before, if you had gluten in your products and there were gluten-free folks that weren't able to actually consume your products, you're missing out on that market. So, there are a few things that are really interesting. I mean, they've got some great employees, it sounds like, because of the fact that they've got Facebook likes. They're active on Twitter. You see them engaging with their users, and they've got big distribution in different stores and in different gyms pushing their e-commerce shop. I mean, I love seeing this, and it's actually a testament to, I love seeing it because of the fact that it's pretty visible. So you see what they're doing. I'd love to understand more about their business, because of the fact that they are still in this space that's always been this artificial space. How do you pack a bunch of protein into a small serving, into a small volume of food, and have it taste good? And they figured out some cool things. And I've read interviews about them. They really focus on different and all natural. So that means you actually work within the framework that consumers like these days, all natural, but then you innovate on it because basically it sounds like, what they think and what many people think, including myself, all the competitors, they just don't taste so good.
Right. And I would think maybe a challenge for them is sometimes the founders may believe in something, and this is going on 20 years. They may really believe in all natural ingredients, but maybe people at the gym, all they really care about, how many grams of protein am I getting? And that's it.
Definitely. I like the fact that they're transparent. They talk about the fact that they are coming out with products that don't have soy in them, but their ingredients list is still pretty long. They have different ingredients that I find difficult to pronounce, things like wheat isolate and soy isolate in some of their products. I give them props for saying that they are still different and that they are still all natural, and that they're working to make sure that the lowest hanging fruit, the things that other companies are doing that are the worst and the least healthy for you, they're taking care of. And then slowly over time, if there are ways for them to innovate and become more all natural, I think they'll do it because that's what their mission is.
So Danny, we've just highlighted two companies today, Lenny and Larry's, which you can find at lennylarry.com, and Adventures in Food, which can be found at adventure, singular, adventure without an S, in food.com. We encourage you guys to leave comments on your thoughts about these companies, any additional thoughts you have on them. Do you think Dan and I were wrong on some of these? Because, as we said, these are just kind of our educated guesses based on what we could find online.
Yeah, so we're trying to introduce you guys to worlds that we don't know. We know a little bit about them, but not a whole lot. For us, I think it's a pleasure because, man, I've never thought about how to source caribou and how to ship it across the United States, or how to pack 20 grams of protein into this much volume and still make it something that is all natural and all this sort of stuff. Man, it's complicated. I can only imagine some of the challenges they've had, and a lot of these companies have been working hard at them. So, kudos to them for staying with it. Congrats to them for growing and finally finding recognition from us and really good success. And I hope that we can work with these companies on arranging interviews in the future.
Yeah, definitely. All right, guys. Well, thanks so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.
Yeah, thank you, guys. Please leave your comments. Excited to hear about them.
Thanks so much for listening. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, find us online at foodstartupspodcast.com.